The divisional round of the NFL playoffs has concluded. What a great weekend of football it was. Best weekend of football I can remember in a while. Incredibly, there's only 3 games left in this NFL season. Let's talk about the 4 games we just saw, starting with the Saturday games. And I guess the biggest upset of the weekend. I would say the best game of the weekend, but I don't know. Seattle-Atlanta today might have topped it. But certainly the biggest upset of the weekend was the Baltimore Ravens going on the road and beating the Denver Broncos. Denver was the Super Bowl favorite coming into these playoffs. They had won 11 games in a row, all 11 by 7 points or more. The story of the game, well, I guess from a negative perspective, the story of the game was Peyton Manning's continued struggles in the postseason. And I said today earlier on the live stream that we do on Sundays, I had always thought it was a little overblown, Peyton Manning's struggles in the postseason. You know, he had never had a great defense with Indianapolis, never had a defense like he had this year with Denver, the defense that was ranked second in the NFL in yards allowed, third in rush yards allowed, third in pass yards allowed coming into this game. Now, the defense didn't play well, no question about it, but Peyton Manning struggled. Turned the ball over 3 times, including that crucial interception that set up the game-winning field goal. Denver scored 2 non-offensive touchdowns, 2 return touchdowns, and still lost 38-35 in double overtime. To me, the game damages Manning's legacy slightly. I mean, he's still a first-ballot Hall of Famer, obviously, but it was not impressive. He was outplayed by Joe Flacco in a situation where he was a heavy favorite. The Broncos a 9.5-point favorite going into the game. Flacco played great. 331 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Very reminiscent of last year's AFC Championship game when he played great against the New England Patriots, except Denver had a great defense coming into the game. New England last year was near last in the league. I think they were last in the league in total yards allowed. Denver, as we mentioned, was second in the NFL in yards allowed heading into that game, so tremendous surprise. Ray Rice played well also, 131 rushing yards, but it was really Joe Flacco's deep passing that was the story of the game for the Baltimore Ravens. 38-35, they advanced to the AFC Championship game. They'll meet the New England Patriots, who played today in the last game of the weekend, the late Sunday game. 41-28 winners over the Houston Texans. Patriots cover. And the game really wasn't that close. I mean, the Texans could have come back and pulled out a miracle backdoor cover in the end. Those who got the line at 10, the line had moved to 10 before kickoff today, and New England needed a late field goal to push it to 13. But Patriots were well ahead, in control throughout the second half. Really, they outplayed Houston for the entire game with the exception of the last 3 minutes of the first half. The Patriots let it get away in the last 3 minutes of the first half. They had a 17-3 lead. They allowed Houston scored 10 unanswered points. Got a little conservative there at the end of the half. Speaking of conservative, the Denver Broncos, I know we just talked about that game, but I forgot to mention how conservative John Fox got at the end of that game. Maybe because I focused on the positive storylines, I guess. Joe Flacco playing really well, the Baltimore offense, but have to question 2 coaching decisions by John Fox. One, to just run the ball. Denver's final possession in regulation, well, their final possession before they took a knee, and that was the second controversial decision. Denver getting the ball with 31 seconds and 2 timeouts left and taking a knee, taking the game into overtime. With Peyton Manning as your quarterback, you'd think you'd try to attack and set up a game-winning field goal like Matt Ryan did at the end of the Atlanta-Seattle game today in a very similar situation. We'll talk about that in a second, but in Denver's last possession before the kneel down to end regulation, they had the ball, could have ended the game with 1 more first down. But John Fox decided, we assume it's John Fox. It could have been Mike McCoy, offensive coordinator, but I'm sure it wasn't without John Fox's blessing at that point in the game. They ran the ball 3 consecutive times. Ran for 3 yards combined on first and second down, had a 3rd and 7, did not trust Peyton Manning, ran the ball again, gave the Ravens the ball with a little over a minute left, ended up costing him, as Joe Flacco, a deep touchdown pass. But so the Ravens will face the New England Patriots. As we said, New England controlled the game today with the exception of the end of the first half. So Houston pulled to within 17-13, but Patriots controlled the game throughout the second half. Tom Brady, 344 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. It was a vintage Brady performance, You know, the Texans, their secondary had been exposed a little bit over the second half of the season, but Still, they've been playing pretty good on the defensive side of the ball over the last month, even though they had collapsed over the end of the season. It was primarily their offense that had been killing them. And their offense today managed 28 points. They had failed to score 20 in 4 or 5 games before today's game, but some of those points were empty into the game points when the outcome had already been decided. Same goes for Matt Schaub's performance. Schaub threw for 343 yards, a couple of touchdowns, a bad interception. I don't think his performance was quite as good as the stats would indicate. He didn't fall flat on his face for sure, but did not think Matt Schaub was that impressive. Arian Foster, a decent game, 90 yards on 22 carries, but New England was the better team. They didn't dominate like they did a month ago when they won 42-14, but I don't think they left any doubt that they were the better team. The final score, 41-28, game probably wasn't as close as that would indicate. As far as the NFC goes, the Saturday game, the San Francisco 49ers beating the Green Bay Packers 45-31. Story of that game was Colin Kaepernick, San Francisco's quarterback, making his first career playoff start and imprinted his name in the NFL record books, rushing for 181 yards on 16 carries. That's the most rushing yards a quarterback has had not only in the playoffs, but in NFL history. In any game in NFL history, quarterback has never rushed for 181 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. But the thing I was most impressed with was 263 passing yards, 2 more touchdowns passing. Really, after the pick 6 to start the game, Colin Kaepernick threw an interception to Sam Shields that was returned for a touchdown to start the game. Colin Kaepernick dominated. The Green Bay defense could not stop him. San Francisco racked up 45 points in that 45-31 win. I liked San Francisco in the game. I was backing them, but I tell you what, I sure didn't think Colin Kaepernick was going to outplay Aaron Rodgers, and that's exactly what happened. Green Bay held to 352 total yards. San Francisco rushed for 323 yards. That's right, the San Francisco 49ers rushed for 323 yards, just ran right over that Green Bay defense. They'll go to Atlanta next week to face the Atlanta Falcons after Atlanta pulled out a wild game today over the Seahawks. You know, this game and the storylines I've been reading after the game have been, Matt Ryan redeems himself, game-winning drive and all this. Let me tell you what, Matt Ryan was an eyelash away from being the absolute GOAT of this game. Well, the co-GOAT in addition to the Atlanta secondary, because the Falcons had this game under control. They had 20-0 at halftime, 27-7 at the end of the third quarter. Let me repeat that. Atlanta was at home ahead 27-7 at the end of the third quarter. Only one team in NFL history, I believe there's been 57 or 58 times a team has been 20 points behind in the second half. A team has only come back one time in the playoffs. That is in the playoffs, not in all games. 57 or 58 times I saw today in the playoffs, a team has had an opportunity to come back from 20 points down. The only time it's happened is that infamous Buffalo-Houston Oilers game back in the early 90s when the Bills came back from a 35-3 halftime deficit. Well, it just about happened again today. The Seattle Seahawks down 20 points in the fourth quarter. They came roaring back, took a lead, took a 28-27 lead with 31 seconds left, and then disaster. 2 Matt Ryan passes. He found Harry Douglas for 29 yards, sort of right on the sideline in front of the Atlanta bench, and then he found the veteran Tony Gonzalez, who broke down in tears after the game. And Matt Bryant came on, made a clutch 49-yard field goal to give Atlanta the 30-28 win. And bettors, a lot of mixed feeling from bettors there because Atlanta was a 1-point favorite all week on BETDAQ. So if you got Atlanta at that price, that was a winner. That line, BETDAQ posted a 2.5 market and a 3 market. Obviously, if you're on Atlanta there, that was a loser. I said after the game, I'm not sure who feels more fortunate at the end of that game. The people who had Seattle plus 2.5 because they ended up winning and that looked like a total loss for about the whole game, or the people who had Atlanta -1 because even though they looked like they had it sewn up nearly the whole game, the Falcons had given it away there at the end. And you saw the scenes of a team that had choked. Now, that's why I said Matt Ryan is now getting all this positive press. Matt Ryan did not play that good a game. I mean, his stats, 24-35, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's now played 4 career playoff games, and in 3 of those games, he's thrown 2 interceptions or more. Matt Ryan was thoroughly outplayed, and the story of this game, even though it was in a losing effort, is Seattle's rookie quarterback, Russell Wilson. I think tonight, Russell Wilson put the argument to bed who is the best rookie quarterback this season. Now, who knows who will turn into the best rookie quarterback? Could still be Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, Russell Wilson all had great seasons. But to put on a performance like he did in the playoffs, 385 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, also rushed for 60 yards on 7 carries. This was on the road in a hostile environment. They fell way behind against the number 1 seed, a 13-3 team. Russell Wilson played like a seasoned veteran. Been playing like a seasoned veteran all year, but really, the Seahawks hadn't opened it up like this in the second half. In the second half, Russell Wilson, because they were way down, they just let him throw it and throw it and throw it. And we were live streaming during the game, and at some point, maybe in the second quarter, I said, well, the Seahawks are in trouble now because, Russell Wilson's going to have to air it out. The Falcons are going to know it's coming, and this is not Seattle's game. And that's true. That's not the way Seattle likes to play. But boy, did Russell Wilson handle it well. Just carved up that Falcons defense in the second half. I mean, I don't know whether more credit should be given to Russell Wilson or more blame placed on the Falcons secondary, because those Seattle wide receivers were running wide open. But I choose to give the credit to Russell Wilson. He was incredible, like I said, in a losing effort. Now, the game was even crazier. We mentioned Matt Bryant's game-winning 49-yard field goal. That didn't quite end the game. 8 seconds left. There were 8 seconds after that. And Mike Smith, by the way, panicked and used a timeout with 13 seconds left, even though they couldn't run another play. They had to kick the field goal. He should have taken it down to 2 or 3 seconds. But because they kicked the field goal 13 seconds left, there were still 8 seconds left after the field goal was made. And instead of a routine squib kick that would land around the 30, 35-yard line, for some reason, the Falcons pulled off this, or attempted to pull off an onside kick, a traditional onside kick. I don't know if Matt Bryant messed up, was ordered to kick a squib kick, or just went horribly wrong. But the Seahawks got the ball at the 50-yard line, and they still had a timeout. I mean, they could have a 15 or 20-yard completed pass and a timeout, and they could have brought on Ryan Longwell, who was just signed off the street for a game-winning field goal attempt, and they completed one pass. And as a matter of fact, I thought that they were going to let Ryan Longwell attempt a game-winning field goal. Would have been 65 yards, and Longwell, even though he's a veteran, I believe he's 38 now. Again, he hadn't played all year, so might have been a little much to ask. Sure would have been nice, I know from a Seahawks perspective, if they would have, if Wilson would have tried to get that ball a little further downfield instead of throwing a 6 or 8 yard out there. I mean, they could have used the entire field. They did have a timeout, but instead of the game-winning field goal attempt, just attempted a Hail Mary that was intercepted. That was Russell Wilson's one interception, was the Hail Mary at the end of the game. He really played beautifully. So again, the Atlanta Falcons hang on to win, but the scenes with 30 seconds left before that, those 2 passes for Matt Ryan and Matt Bryant's field goal, I mean, Matt Ryan or Coach Mike Smith. Mike Smith could not hide it. He looked like he was shot in the gut. I mean, he couldn't even stand up straight, looking at the ground. And I guess, how could you blame him? Obviously, the Falcons were 0-3 in the playoffs in the Mike Smith, Matt Ryan era, so it was a big monkey off their backs. They did seem to tighten up towards the end of that game. And I thought Atlanta was going to be about a 3.5-point favorite before they tightened up at the end of the game. And then I still thought they were going to be a 3-point favorite in that neighborhood. Surprised to find out, even though BETDAQ hasn't released a line yet, we do expect that tomorrow. But in most places around the world, the Falcons opening up as an underdog, a 3 to 3.5-point underdog to San Francisco next week. I mean, the Falcons are now 34-5 at home when Matt Ryan is a starting quarterback, and they're going to be a home underdog next week against San Francisco 49ers in Colin Kaepernick's first career road playoff start. That'll just tell you a lot about how people have still not bought into the Falcons. We wrote something about that here on the site 5 or 6 days ago, how people I said they were sleeping on the Falcons, but the way the Falcons look towards the end of the game today, maybe people should be sleeping on them. Maybe people have the right idea. We'll see. We're going to look at this game as the week goes along. At one point, at about halftime, I even said during the live stream, I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I lean towards the Falcons at home. I knew that San Francisco, based on that performance against Green Bay last night, I knew people would be high on San Francisco, and I thought it might be a good time for an Atlanta play, but Atlanta didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence the way they ended that game today, so we'll have to see. As far as that other game goes, haven't seen a line on that game. I'd expect roundabout New England -7, right? Somewhere in that territory anyway. And boy, we'll see. They're going to be tough to bet against Tom Brady at home. I did it tonight. I was on Houston plus 9.5, and I regretted it. It was clearly the wrong side to be on. I was 2-2 my 4 games today. I want to congratulate my BETDAQ colleague Simon Milam for a big weekend. Be sure to check out his stuff. We, of course, posted here on BETDAQ NFL. Well, I guess that's it for the recap. We'll be previewing the upcoming games. I guess there's only 2 games, only 3 games left in the season, but the AFC and NFC Championship game, we'll really be previewing those all week here on BETDAQ NFL, so be sure to check back. Until then, for BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.